Welcome back, family. Welcome back to another episode of Parent Power Hour, where you all and your input and your questions and your comments drive this show. Thank you so much for tuning in again just after the holiday. Case of the Mondays, in case of the after holiday Mondays, more especially today. So we thank you all, our audience and family, for joining us. And we certainly thank our guests for joining us today. Family, we are once again honored to have esteemed guest. Mr. Ryan Kaiser is returning to the show. You all may remember him from, it's one of our first guests who did just a phenomenal job. This is when it felt like he was in his bunker at the time, really dealing with students and his own family as he was teaching. We have Miss Loria McIntyre and Miss Jasmine Williams. And in a moment, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. The opening question, though, family, and we're all in this virtual space in some facet or another. I've asked my guests, and I'm going to ask you all as well, what is the one thing or what thing helps you to stay focused in this virtual space that we are in some capacity? Most of us, at least, are having to adapt to a virtual way of living in our lives. So we had a volunteer, which is unusual. So Ms. Jasmine Williams, can you please let us know your answer?
Yes, thank you. So some of the things that I like do to kind of stay focused is especially on Mondays, which today is Monday. I kind of like sit down literally in my phone and I create notes on what needs to get done for the week. And sometimes I'll bucket it for like what's Monday, what's Tuesday, what's Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And then I use that throughout my week when, chaos of whatever could be going on in the house or online can get you off task. I have that note sheet with me in my phone so I can always be reminded of what needs to get done so that I can make sure that I'm really productive, at least for that one particular day.
All right, thank you, Ms. Williams, and thank you for volunteering that. Mr. Kaiser, ladies first, so we're going to go to Ms. McIntyre.
I shut the door like I just did just now. So I shut the door to my office. My son doesn't come in, my husband doesn't come in, and then I just focus. Shut the door.
Shut the door. Okay. Yes, you can snap it, Jasmine. I don't know, Jasmine. It's funny because I was gonna tell you. I forgot to tell you before I talked to you before we started the show. You may see me doing this. This is nuggets of wisdom. So you all are dropping some dimes, and Jasmine, that was really close. Miss McIntyre, I love it. Shut the door. So we are nugget droppers of wisdom here. Mr. Kaiser, welcome back. And how have you adapted, and what do you do to focus?
Well, it's interesting because I was in the bunker last time we talked, and Miss McIntyre's right on point. I shut the door, and that's about as inspiring as I can get right now. But like, I have to. I got 4 kids, and if I leave that door open, it's going to be a party in here. I got to shut the door. And I also, what I started doing a few weeks ago is I took a little whiteboard, kind of like I do in a classroom. I put some stuff on there that kind of help me remind me throughout the day, like where I am on my daily schedule. So I kind of like do that on the whiteboard, and I have it over here, you know, just so I can always see, all right, where am I on the day? How long is it till lunch? Things along those lines. But shut the door and keep an eye on the schedule.
I love it. Shut the door, scheduling, journaling, and creating an agenda per Ms. Williams. Excellent. Family, if you're just joining us, we are the face of the franchise short once again this evening. The bright side is that our brother Tyrone is doing much, much better, just not up to par this evening to join us. But so please continue to uh, give him great love and send him messages and comments and text him to wish him well. We're looking forward to seeing him on Thursday's show, of course, which is Tyrone's house. So we're going to jump right into this. As you know, family, this is our second group of folks that we're talking about in a series of 3 where we're focusing on curriculum, the importance of it, Do we need it? Do we not? And how do our different educators and school leaders feel about curriculum personally? So that is what we are revisiting today in the middle school edition of the curriculum, and is it necessary? Let's see. We will start with Miss McIntyre.
Mhm.
What do you teach? And well, introduce yourself, of course. I'm sorry, and let us know what you teach, and we'll go around the table that way.
Okay, so I am a math teacher. I'm an instructional coach this year, but I've taught math probably for 18 years. I started out in New York, then I went to Temple, I got my master's, and I taught math in Archdiocese schools there, and then I came to Baltimore, and I taught math and social studies. But I'm an instructional coach now for math teachers.
Thank you very much. Ms. Williams,
Mhm.
would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name is Jasmine Williams. This is my 7th year teaching in Baltimore City Schools. I'm a 7th grade math teacher. I've literally taught across all the spectrum, so all the way to 1st to 8th grade in those 7 years. I'm currently at KIPP right now teaching, and I've done a little bit. So I've done a little bit of coaching. I also do tutoring for math. I'm teaching math, it's actually one of my passions to talk about math, particularly middle school math.
Outstanding. Thank you, Ms. Williams. And Mr. Kaiser, once again.
Hey, so it's I guess my 21st year of teaching. I taught 6 years where I'm from in Omaha, Nebraska, and then some of these math teachers can help me out. 15 years then, I guess, here in Baltimore City, and I've taught. Early on, I taught all subjects, but the last 6 or 7 years, it's just been social studies at the Mount Washington School here in the city.
Yeah, and tonight we have two hot topics here. We're going to be talking about social studies, which is a very hot button issue right now in the academic world, and math. Math and science seem to always be with the importance and the changes that are going on. Ms. Williams, I'd like to start with you first. What is the name of your curriculum? How do you feel, without getting yourself in trouble one way or the other, how do you feel about it? We'll start there.
Okay, so for math, we use Eureka Math Curriculum. And many people are familiar with it because we were using Engage New York, but then they broke off and now we're using Eureka. It's the same thing. There's some little tweaks, but for the most part, it's the same. And honestly, since I've been teaching, I've really only used maybe that curriculum. And then prior to that, Agile Minds, that's another curriculum we had in the district before that. And it's funny because in comparison, Agile Minds to a Eureka, I actually prefer Eureka over the Agile Minds curriculum that we had once before. Couple of things that I will say, and I've noticed, when it comes to the curriculum, for me, I felt like when I first started out, I loved it. It was great. It was a resource because not only is the Common Core math new, but also it kind of helped me to stay the course with the trajectory of whatever they did in elementary school and how that would carry over to middle school. And if you had not been with that curriculum for the entire duration, you might not know all of that information and how things are really building upon themselves. But if you use the curriculum, then it kind of helps you to because it's already embedded. They already do that. The downside to the curriculum a lot of times is, of course, the wording. It's very wordy, convoluted. Sometimes I don't even know what they're talking about. So, when you present it to kids, they're definitely not going to know, especially if you don't make the tweaks and the necessary adjustments that you need to make. So that's one of the first things. I think also too, sometimes the curriculum is not the most culturally responsive. Sometimes the examples they use for math, it's a lot of kids, they don't have cars. So if you're using different examples around odometers and different things about a vehicle, you have to understand, if kids are not, well, a lot of kids that I taught, they were walking to school or taking the bus, and you have an example of some sort that they're not used to or not experienced with, it can make it a little difficult to make connections within the curriculum. The great thing though about it is, one, you don't necessarily have to create rigorous problems. The problems are rigorous enough, which is really, really important for teachers in terms of trying to prepare kids for the future grades. And so I look at it as it's a resource. It's not the source, it's a resource. If you're a first year teacher, you might want to follow it a little more closely because you don't know the whole longitude of the entire math scope and sequence for K-12 education. But if you've been doing this for a while, great. You can use these questions as question banks. You know what type of questions in the style and the manner of which they're going to be assessed, how to ask it, because the curriculum kind of shows you that. And so that's why I say it's a give and take. It depends on your perspective and how well you are with making your own changes in the curriculum, how you probably are going to feel about it.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Williams. And of course, that comes with an experienced educator such as yourself who can make those kind of spot checks, seeing the needs of their students versus what the curricular examples have. But Ms. McIntyre, I want to come to you. Ms. Williams talked about something that was going to segue. She must have stole my questions because she talked directly to something that is of utmost importance, and that's transition from elementary to middle school. How can you help parents and some of us out here understand that importance with curriculum and how that curriculum may or may not affect the student in 5th grade transitioning to 6th grade?
So I will say, when I taught Agile Minds, I did not know it was not connected at all to what 5th graders, because I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I was standing in front of class like, what is going on? Why don't you all understand? There was just a total disconnect. But I do notice with the Eureka curriculum, when you look at the modules flow. So if you're going to do something that's like some of the 3rd grade teachers that I coach, right? It's from concrete to the abstract. Like you can actually see, you can use the manipulatives, virtual world using diadex. You can see concrete to abstract. And so that connection is necessary because as you advance in math becomes more abstract. So if you can get the concrete in the 3rd, the 4th grade, and 5th grade, then 6th grade, 7th, and 8th should be easier. But let me say what my colleague just said. Eureka Math is very hard on reading. So if you're not a strong reader or you have vocabulary deficits, it can be very, very hard for you. But I understand why the district picked Eureka, because I like the curriculum because it is connected. And I need those connections so that if I'm teaching 6th, I know what 7th grade needs. If I'm teaching 7th, I know what 8th grade needs because I've taught all of those. So the connections, the pieces, they just fit together and they make the puzzle work. But again, just the deficits, language, some of our kids just don't do well on the ELA part.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre. And if I could follow up with you and Mr. Kaiser, I'm dying to come to you because I'm an old social studies teacher myself, because you and I can really get into, I would love to know your experiences with social studies curriculum in Baltimore City, but I'll save that for you. I won't steal your thunder. But Ms. McIntyre, when you have those deficits, you have those reading deficits, you have the issues, a beautiful thing that you said about as you advance in math, math becomes more abstract.
Right.
How do you coach educators, not like Miss Williams, who's been in the game for 7 years, obviously knows how to reach her students. How do you coach 1st, 2nd, 3rd year teachers with, using Eureka Math, because that's the curriculum that's placed in front of them? How do you help them navigate those deficits?
So I will say in the virtual world, and again, being a coach, this is my 1st year as a coach, they have videos. So when you have a new teacher and they're not really in depth with the concepts, I say you need to watch those Eureka videos. So just like those kids are watching it, I need you to watch it so that when I come into the class, that I know you understand the concepts, the vocabulary, that you're not teaching the children incorrectly. And so I like the fact that they provide videos because anybody can just have a brush up. Like everybody, I don't always remember the quadratic equation. Like that's just not something I walk around and I'm like, oh, this is such a, everybody needs something to look at. I like Eureka because they give you so much. All you have to do is just go in and you can learn. And so that's how I teach my my first, second, and third year teachers. I'm like, you got to watch and you got to learn. You got to do it on your time. You got to do it in your space. But the videos are excellent.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre. Okay,
Mhm.
Mr. Kaiser. So I will keep my experiences out of the room for right now, and I will talk to you about yours. What's the curriculum for social studies? What are the challenges that you have with it, and what are some of the triumphs, or are the triumphs all of your own making?
Yeah, everything's 100% my own making. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. What curriculum were you talking about? Did I miss a curriculum somewhere along the way that there was one afforded to us? Let me think. I can't think of one. Uh, I will say right now that those in charge of the social studies for the district, and there are two, they are working overtime to make sure that there are things, because I really can't imagine if I was a first year teacher right now, or second or third, like trying to teach social studies. And I mean, I brought these textbooks home with me, but even in the classroom, I only occasionally use them, pull out maps here and there and things like that. But as a first year teacher, you kind of need a real baseline of a curriculum to pull from. And there simply hasn't been one. As far as I've been teaching, there's standards and this is what should be taught and when, but you'll find most social studies teachers are like, okay, and they start creating their own. Now, that being said, like all social studies teachers, I'm like, all right, why isn't there a curriculum? Now, if there was a curriculum, I would be like, why do we have to teach this curriculum? So like, no matter what, what's going on, I would question what exactly is going on here. But I don't know about you. I had, as long as I've been in the district, there really hasn't been one. I taught at a charter school for a while where this is my favorite thing we did, was we created themes for all subjects around the entire year. We taught thematically, so they'd be hearing a lot of the same, and this is where I would love to see curriculum go in the future, but we'll see. They would hear a lot of the same vocabulary across the different classrooms, and you could walk into art and it might look like a science/math class. You walk into math and be like, is this music, or is this social studies, or is this math? And you're hearing and seeing a lot of the same things being taught. And the kids loved it. They learned a lot. The side note, their test scores really took off because, if you can do all that stuff thematically, the state standard tests are easy to get through. So a lot of the things now, like, it's stuff that I've created over the years. Everything from the DBQ project, the document-based question project, for those that don't know about that too much. And then National History Day is a huge component right now for teaching middle school social studies. And that also is something we've completely kind of figured out on our own. I love it to death. But then what you're doing is I have 140 students, let's say. That's 140 separate curriculums I'm teaching. Separate subjects, separate topics. Everyone's got their own set of books or articles, maps, videos, photographs they need to analyze. I need to walk them through that, especially for those sixth graders and their first year doing it. And right now, the social studies department, they've been pulling things together just to make sure there's, especially our beginning teachers are having like, okay, I know what I should be teaching for, let's say, ancient Rome, and they're pulling articles and things, a lot of stuff that you can access from Clever, and it's a start. And I know they've been working relentlessly on this to have some sort of standard around it. But Baltimore City as a whole, for a long time now, has completely left social studies to the side. And and it's not just Baltimore City. And if we wonder what we saw over this past year, why that happened, there's no mystery as to why all this is happening. Everything from not understanding this pandemic and the history of it. We're replicating what happened in 1918. We're doing the exact same mistakes that happened in 1918. Would have been awesome if that would have been part of any curriculum for anybody growing up. Everything from our protests this summer and what happened from George Floyd on. I mean, of course, that's just what happened from then on. But it reminded me of when Vanguard of the Revolution came out in PBS, about the Black Panther movement in the 60s and 70s. And I remember one comment on the PBS page was, how come nobody taught this to me when I was growing up? And that really stuck with me. And like, yeah, like when I was growing up, well, especially me, white suburbia, anything any visualization that we saw of the Black Panther movement was on the news with just people walking around with guns. Like I had no clue about the school lunch program that they started. That's just one of many different things that they had started. And so we definitely, I tried to incorporate like that documentary into what we're learning. And but like, it's, again, there's not a curriculum. For the most part, it's standards, how you want to teach those standards. A lot of it over the years has been left up to the teachers. Occasionally a grant will come in. Hey, we got a grant, we're going to start this. And then that grant money dries up and the person that started it, they're off doing something else at a different district. Of course, that happens across subject areas, but I would really love to see adequate resources and time dedicated to a more streamlined approach that social studies teachers we can draw from, like the basic curriculum, we can add to it. But right now, even if I was in like my 5th or 6th year teaching, I really don't know how to be teaching social studies, especially now in a virtual environment. I'm struggling as it is. I've been teaching this a long time. I started moving my documents over digitally a few years ago. But it's a struggle, and I would like to see kind of what Montgomery County has done, and they've dedicated time, money, and resources. And the time is the key here too. Like, not teach teachers what and how they need to teach it starting in October, but like time before the school year starts to really get into some of the content. And in Montgomery County, they've focused more on like primary sources and things like that, and less of like, this was the president at this time, this is the general, this is the battle they won. There's a whole bunch of different perspectives out there that textbooks absolutely miss out on. And one thing I really liked, one of the lessons I saw in Montgomery County was taking these textbooks and analyzing and rewriting them the way they should be written. And it's like 8th graders are doing things like that. So not much of a curriculum. There's a good baseline being drawn up now. The social studies department's working overtime to make this happen, and communicating with people that teach social studies. Here's what we're working on. Here's what we're developing. I know they're really trying to get the Be More Me project off the ground and do more with that. I could talk about Baltimore's history for the next 10 hours if you guys have time, but we're really not even scratching the surface on what we could teach about what has happened here in our own city.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. I'm apologizing to all of the family that signed on to ask questions. Miss Elena Ross Jones, welcome. Going back to what she does to stay focused in this virtual world. Miss Ross Jones says she does a 3-mile walk every day. And you know what, Miss Ross Jones, I found myself doing the same thing, walking much more than I ever have in my life, getting out of the dwelling. So thank you for giving us that, Ms. Ross Jones. Michael Cheney, good evening, sir. Welcome to the program. Ms. Yaja, welcome to the program. Thank you so much. Elena Ross Jones asks, there are many courses that do not have a curriculum. I'm assuming she's saying, what is that, or why is that? Mr. Kaiser just spoke to it, and he, just to put a fine point on it, Mr. Kaiser, I started in Baltimore City about 20 years ago, and it was the same, and I was shocked. I grew up in Howard County, and it wasn't perfect, but it was a lot more than the students in Baltimore City was getting. I was a political science and legal theory major. I brought all my textbooks, all my history books. I taught them about the Panthers, a proper understanding of who the Panthers were and other such movements, just like you did. And it's amazing to hear you say now, which I know for my last couple of years before I got out of the classroom, it is the same. Besides Be More Me, essentially, it is the same. And to your point about the department itself, they're understaffed. And I don't know about now, but at the beginning of the fall, there was no department head. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. I know they're grossly understaffed. And some of the similarities with Montgomery, and I used to teach also in DC. DC Social Studies Department, Mr. Kaiser, if you ever get a chance, it is fantastic. We're gonna have to talk offline. It is fantastic. I mean, a first year, you could drop the curriculum in their lap and they'd be on autopilot. It's fantastic. And normally some people lament the PDs. I know I do. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not in the classroom, so I lament the PDs. In DC, I love my professor. It was like going back to college. And there were so many wonderful tools that they share. And to come to Baltimore City, that level of curriculum and support just is not there.
Why do you think it's so different there? Is it access to archives and resources, or they just said, no, we're going to do it. We're going to make it happen?
It had to have been a deliberate initiative to create their issue is they don't get concrete social studies until middle school. So first through fifth, it's kind of hodgepodge, kind of like how it is in the city. But if from sixth grade on, it's superb. Let me get to some questions here. I'm sorry, Miss Ross Jones, I'm sorry. She said, no, I was agreeing. There are several courses that do not have a curriculum. Thank you, Miss Ross Jones, for that clarification. I'm sorry. Probabilities and statistics has a series of PowerPoints and assessments. Wow. And that's it. Okay, thank you for your input, Ms. Ross Jones. Anyone else, please chime in with your questions and comments for our esteemed panel here. So, Ms. McIntyre, I'm going to go to you as a coach, and Ms. Williams, I do recognize you as a coach as well. So I'll go to Ms. McIntyre and then Ms. Williams. Mr. Kaiser spoke to the duality of having a curriculum.
Right.
You don't have it and you feel like you're lost. And then when you do have, you feel like sometimes you feel like it's not worth teaching because it seems inadequate. What say you to that? Is a curriculum necessary? And how do you feel about them, that need?
I like having a curriculum because it keeps me paced. It gives me organization so I know what to do, when to do. And if I'm off pace, I also know what's coming ahead. So I know what I have to do in order to prepare those students so that they don't lose anything. So for math, a curriculum is necessary. Not sure that everybody agrees, but for me, again, you look at the standards and it's like an umbrella, it just opens up. So you open the umbrella, you look at your standards, you look at the different modules, and then you open the modules up and you see what you have to do. Keeps me organized. So I like the curriculum. It's everything that I need to be successful.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre. Ms. Williams, you are, aside from being a classroom educator, you have experience as a coach too. So I saw you affirming that a curriculum is needed. And then if I could also ask your approach to coaching other colleagues through, Eureka Math and math in general.
So I absolutely believe in a curriculum. I think just the days of teachers for math creating and making all of this stuff, like sometimes teachers spend so much time doing that. And number one, it's not even grade appropriate. Number two, it probably is not even rigorous. I mean, it may be fun, but is it going to yield results in the classroom? And that's the biggest issue. And so with a curriculum, I feel like Ms. McIntyre said, it keeps us on pace. It's an accountability measure for everybody, both the teacher, the school, the district. Like this is so like when teachers are preparing, they kind of know where to go from because it's the same thing. And if everybody is getting the same thing, it's easier to measure a little bit better, not always, but a little bit from school to school to school, because everybody in the district is supposed to be using the same curriculum. So now we can see and we can look at some people's practices and say, oh, your practice is great. Let's look at what she's doing with module 2 as a seventh grade teacher. You can probably look at this person. It helps for professional development because it's a streamline. If we're all talking the same language, we know how to then support, we know how to replicate to show our practice to another, maybe first year teacher and give them the same blueprint, and it should work if it is the same. But if everybody's doing different things, it's kind of hard from a coach perspective to replicate good practices, and then to be able to name what we're doing so well because everybody's doing their own thing. And in terms of like when it comes to coaching, my thing is I'm always telling, especially a first year, like become a student of the curriculum, like really become the student. Like it's easy to say, oh, I don't get this. I don't know why they do this. And a lot of times I found, even being honest, like sometimes they're like, why are they doing this? Well, they're doing this because if you go a step further in 9th or 10th grade, they're going to be doing this. And so when you omit this because you think it's not necessary, you actually are setting them up for failure in a later grade. And so I think that some of that people not liking the curriculum or having a lot of gripes with it is because you lack understanding of it. Some of it is understanding of how it progresses, but some of it can also be content lacking. Like you're missing some pieces to understanding how content flows. And when you understand how content flows, some of that stuff makes sense. Wow. And it helps to really be able to coach a first year because again, the first year has the blueprint. You have the lessons, you have the assessments, you have the standards. Sometimes you even have like tasks. People have created PowerPoints and projects. They have so many resources. So really as a first year, all you really need to do is spend time learning the pedagogy to teach the curriculum, your classroom management, and don't spend so much time trying to figure out how to make worksheets.
Thank you. Wow. Nuggets. But I'm not done, Ms. Williams. Okay, Mr. Kaiser. I see you, Mr. Kaiser. Little something different. Ms. Williams, to follow up from Teachers Democracy Project, the question says here, it seems like so many parents have a beef with new math. Mm-hmm. How do we bridge the gap? Is the math really new? Now, as a parent who tried to help my child, let me see, she's in 9th grade now. So 5 years ago, I tried to help this beautiful little child with the math when she brought it home. Now, Miss McIntyre, admittedly, I was probably I was a C at my best day student, Miss McIntyre. However, Miss Williams, it does seem new. It seems like, well, wait a minute, she was like moving things around. I'm like, no, baby. 2 + 2, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. But she's like, no, Dad, there are several ways to come up with. I'm like, So I love the question. It's timely, it's legitimate. Is the math really new? And how do you bridge the gap?
So first thing first, the math is not really new, but the strategies that are being presented are new. Because a lot of times we were not focused on the why. We did not focus on conceptual understanding. All we were like is procedural fluency, the rote memorization, memorize it, and that's just what it is. If we ask them, why is a negative times a negative, a positive? And they're like, I don't know, it just is. Memorize the rule. And with that, that's not good enough. And it doesn't help to make connections between other parts of the math curriculum that kids are going to experience as they move on. And so I think to me, what's happening here is kids are learning a lot of strategies. And I actually think that's a good thing for them because what kids are finding is what works for them, what works for their brains. We're trying to help them to become really good mentally with the math. I know in elementary grades, they're trying to work that out with the different strategies, but also help them to have that deep understanding. Because a lot of times if you ask a kid, how did you get the answer? Why? They have a very difficult time articulating the why. And the problem is as they move on and they're being assessed, that why is so critical. It's so critical. And that not being able to express it comes out of sometimes just doing procedural fluency. That's the result. I mean, all you're doing is just plugging and chugging. And so with the new math, it feels that way because we may have learned just the standard algorithm. But to be honest, the area model that they're learning or the tape dot, all of that stuff is helpful. It's visuals. And so I just think that one of the things I would say to a parent is the beautiful thing is there's so many YouTube University, you can learn everything, right? And so, no, seriously, if you type probably area model, 3-digit multiplication, somebody has a video and has done it. And when you watch the video, like sometimes it kind of helps to be like, oh, and so for you, you may say it doesn't take all that, but for them, it is necessary to figuring out how to really connect those dots.
Thank you. Wow, thank you, Ms. Williams.
And the last thing, I do think that the kids are going to be a lot smarter than we were.
Well, you know what?
I'm telling you guys.
I was just about to give you a compliment because I was going to say you made me feel better as a student because now I can say the reason that I'm dysfunctionally mathematically speaking is because I didn't have the right visual aids to help me along the way.
True. No, but that's my story. So like, as I'm a math teacher, I didn't always love math. I didn't always have the greatest experience. I went to school in North Carolina and Charlotte, Mecklenburg school districts, and I just did not feel math was connected. I didn't feel like the way in which they explained it, it was one way. This was the way. This is the only way. And that's what it was. And so I feel like when you offer kids a lot of strategies, you offer different entry points. Maybe the standard algorithm is great for a kid that has strong number sense. But what if I'm struggling with that? Do you have another way? Do you have a visual model that I can use so that I can access the math? I feel like school's supposed to be accessible for all, but we don't consider how learners learn, their past experiences with math, like where they're shaky. So if I have all these different experiences, you got to give me a bunch of different ways so I can get to the same place you're getting to.
Wow, absolutely. Absolutely. Before I go back to Mr. Kaiser and ask him about social studies one more time, let me see here. Miss Keisha Goodwin, welcome to the show. Keisha, thank you for weighing in. Her comment is sometimes the pacing is so fast that the students are exposed, just like you said, Ms. Williams, but not mastering the skills. Also, two-step math word problems are pushed onto students before one-step math word problems are mastered or has sufficient practice. Keisha Edwards says that, welcome, Keisha. Thank you for weighing in. I agree that a curriculum is needed. I think we have to discuss the role of curriculum and clarify the relationship we expect teachers to have with curriculum. And all of you all have said that here. Ms. Yaja says Eureka Math presents a handicap if the student is not a great reader or writer. Thank you, Ms. Yaja. And both Ms. McIntyre and Ms. Williams did address that, the deficits that can happen. And, you know, our city as a whole, unfortunately, is not the best as it could be. You know, with literacy, it's interesting. My daughter and I were driving, and there's one of those refurb benches. You remember in the 80s and 90s where most of the benches in the city would say America. Well, Ms. Williams, you said you're a transplant from North Carolina. You may not know this, but those benches used to say Baltimore City, the city that reads. And she was like, oh, wow, Dad. I was like, yeah, but, you know, today it's difficult to make that claim. But, you know, unfortunately, we've fallen behind in that regard. Mr. Kaiser, question to you. We've been hearing that especially during this COVID period, COVID era, social studies is being dropped and reduced significantly. Is this true? Why do we do this? And what does that mean? So we've been hearing that, you know, social studies kind of been put on the back burner.
I'm assuming they're talking about in the city.
Yes.
I would say to that is you're finally just seeing at home through a virtual format what students experience in schools. Many do not get social studies. Why? Because it's not available. There's not an easy format. Not that it needs to be easy, but an accessible format for teachers to dive into, to learn and understand themselves before they can even teach something as complicated as history is. So that's nothing new. You're just finally going to seeing it for real at home. There might be there might be a time set aside and, oh yeah, your child will be learning social studies at this time, at this day, like when they're actually at school. But a lot of times that's not happening. A lot of time out in the county, it's worded as content. You're learning content at that time. And sometimes it's science, sometimes it's social studies. And my question is like, why are we teaching contents separately from teaching literacy skills and math skills? Those should all be intertwined. And it bothers me so much that like we don't use as much nonfiction historical content, like primary sources too, to teach literacy. It boggles my mind. I can't understand it. So that's nothing new that they're not getting that at in the virtual format. So how's that for
Thank you.
inspiration?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kaiser. And it would be wonderful. You all would be a dream team if you were, colleagues within the same school, because I could see easily, Mr. Kaiser. And I think what people don't realize is how students could, and all of you are really saying this, how students could really learn better if things were integrated, like you said, Ms. McIntyre, from concrete to abstract. Ms. Williams, you're talking about really learning your student population and giving them real world examples. Why am I going to talk to you and ask you questions about a car and an odometer when you're walking to school or you're riding a bus, and all of the different parts of society that's wrapped up in social studies. It's not a topic that is extracted from the others. They're inclusive. And so, you all are just really dropping some nuggets tonight. Wish our dear brother Tyrone was here, because he would really be enjoying this. Shout outs to Tyrone. Get better soon, my friend. And you got to host a show on Thursday. Before we start getting into final thoughts, Miss Keisha Goodwin, thank you again, Miss Keisha. Her comment is, rote learning for family facts are important to accurately complete tape diagrams, etc. Most of our students struggle with fact fluency in order to move on to the next skill. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So I said this last show when we had our elementary educators and leaders on, and I'm going to ask you all as middle school educators and leaders, if you had a magic wand, and some of it has been sussed out already with your responses, and I just think they're golden and beautiful. If you had a magic wand, Ms. McIntyre, I'll start with you. How would you design a math curriculum? Just of course, overarching things, nothing too complicated, but what would be the crux of your design to help teachers and scholars?
So first, I would, it has to be attached to real world. So if you remember, my colleague said some things that the kids just don't get because they don't relate. So when I think of a curriculum, like, it has to be culturally responsive. So there's a book I read in college. I think it was Other People's Children by Lisa Delpit. I think that's her name. And so until the curriculum reflects those that you teach, it's going to always be just a bit harder for some kids. Some kids are just going to surpass and do what they have to, but other kids are sitting there like, what are you talking about? So if there was some way to put some cultural relevance into the curriculum. So I always change things up as I teach. Like, I'm just thinking of when I teach volume, like, most kids don't have a pool in the backyard because a lot of kids don't have a backyard big enough for a pool. So when I do volume for rectangular, I know my kids love sneakers. Like, that's one of the things I learned when I came to Baltimore. So I need you to bring your Nike box, and we're going to make this into a rectangular prism, and I'm about to teach you the formula. Like, I have to think like that because I know what I look like, but I went to a fantastic school in New York where everything was culturally responsive because I'm originally from Harlem in the Bronx. So like, it was just made for us. But I always recognize those deficits in curriculum, and it could just turn a kid off. I'm not saying that it all has to be that way, but I'm just saying, if I had a curriculum, I want it to be connected to the kids, the population who I'm teaching. That would be the best. I'm not knocking Eureka. Eureka is great, but we need some more cultural relevance. Like, we need something that talks about different groups.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre. Mr. Kaiser, bring it home for us social studies and historian scholars, my friend. What would you do if you had a magic wand, so to speak?
Well, I'm probably going to say about the exact same thing, other than shutting the door. Uh, we need these, if they're integrated, these, our lessons are integrated and our curriculum is integrated and the kids are interested in it. It's so much easier to teach if they're interested in the topics. It's one of the reasons I like National History Day, because they're choosing topics that interest them. I can really pull out a lot of literacy skills in the different articles and things that they have chosen, a topic they have chosen. But we need to do that across the board and then integrate our subjects. And I think we'll find much better outcomes for our children, not just in the short term and not on the state tests, but like in the long run, in their future, and things that they want to do, they can see themselves doing, if we can really get a handle on integrating and more of these units together across the subject areas.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. I'm gonna follow up real quick before I go to Ms. Williams. Mr. Kaiser, can you explain, someone did ask, what is National History Day? Can you explain how wonderful that project is?
Yeah, so it's something that's been around for 40 years. Honestly, I just heard about it last year, or not last year, 6 years ago for the first time. It's a national competition. Each year there's a different theme. So like there's been themes of rights and responsibilities. There's been a theme of leadership and legacy. This year the theme is communication. And the students get to pick a topic as long as it fits within that theme. They pull, and of course with sixth graders we really help them do this more, but pull different sources to research that topic. And it can't be something really general. It can't be, oh, I'm gonna do the history of phones. It's got to be real specific, like how did basically I'm like how did we transition into cell phones, that type of thing, something more specific. Or how did they communicate with flags during certain time periods in history, or battles, or the history of communicating, not just baseball, but like hand signals in baseball when they're pitchers and the catcher, like some real specific topics. Then from there, after they've done the research, then they develop a thesis statement. We do an annotated bibliography, and then they get to pick how they want to show their work. They can make a website, a documentary. They can do a performance. They can do a trifold exhibit. Some choose to do a paper. I would have never have chosen to done a paper, but many do choose to do a paper. And then we have a school-wide competition. The top 18 projects from the school go on to the citywide competition against the rest of the middle schools in the city. And then from there, the top 18 in the city go on to the state, and the top 18 from the state go on to nationals, and the nationals are actually held at the University of Maryland College Park. So I haven't gotten anybody to nationals yet. Only we've had quite a few go to state. It's just really cool seeing the kids get so interested in their topics, and all the skills they learn along the way of annotated bibliography, cross-checking sources, being comfortable to present your topic to people and defend your topic, not just to your classmates, but we have judges come from around the city to look at their projects and ask them questions about it. Just really see the pride that they get in doing all that. But I've had, and not to sound super cheesy, I have again college students now writing me all the time, thanking me for NHD, something we started 6 or 7 years ago that I wasn't sure was going to be a really interesting, cool thing. And now they're like, yes, this got me through high school. I knew how to do everything through high school, analyzing sources, and college, and on and on and on. So it's a great competition. It's a lot of work. Like I said, it's going to be 120 separate curriculum topics I'm going to be teaching, and sources I'm going to be teaching to all the different kids, but it's well worth it.
I have to concur 100%. Two beautiful things about that is that the scholars can work individually or in groups, which is fantastic, because you have some of the higher functioning learners that can pull along their friends, and their friends learn to utilize their skills in different ways. It's beautiful. Not only that, their NHD website is superb. Not only does it teach the scholars what the different level of sources are, it gives them examples, it gives them layout, it just walks them through the whole process. So it is very, very fun. And it's one of those things, I'm sure you're at this point now, I wasn't initially, but I'm sure you're at this point now, Mr. Kaiser, you could just tell them, hey, go do it. You know, I used to spend the first 2 or 3 days walking them through, and after that, hey, I can help you wherever I can help you, but you're leading this, you are captaining the ship. Miss Williams, magic wand. If you could do it yourself, if you could design it and build it, what would math curriculum look like? And I see you all online. I promise I will get to you after Miss Williams' comments.
So a lot of things were said that I kind of want to just like hit. One of the things I wish that the curriculum had embedded was time for remediation. And if I had a curriculum, I think that before we start any module, we start with like our prerequisites. We do that already, like in the classroom as a teacher, but I wish the curriculum already had that embedded there and it was already ready to go. Like you didn't have to go and find that stuff. Because I think that if you start off the module with like prerequisites, it kind of gives kids a boost of their confidence when they start because it's not so high. And it kind of gives you a gauge on where you're going to need to fill in those gaps as you go through the module. The other thing that I heard that I thought was pretty cool was like about project-based learning and like real world applications. And I think that what I would love to see, and I see this in Wit and Wisdom, but I don't really see this in math and the Eureka is just the end of module. But if we have some type of project that we were communicating with students, the skills that you're learning in this module is building up to be able to complete X, Y, or Z project, right? And so just giving an example, ratios is a first module in 7th grade. And in ratios, you learn about unit rates and you learn about proportions. And what I know in the past years, we did something where we talked about funding per pupil and about the whole fair student funding and how that works and how that impacts us as students and as schools, but also talking about how ratios and proportions are at the heart of a lot of that because that's how they get those calculations. And recognizing like looking at a school budget and seeing like if you're going to have enough money come October, which for a lot of us are familiar with, or what's going to be that case. And we've done that, a lesson like that. And I thought that that was really powerful. But I think that if we had more of those types of activities that are at the end and students know like, hey, as you're doing these different skill sets, it's building up to being able to answer this big question in math that, you know, you'll have to solve and figure out. I just think it'll make it more practical. It'll make the math seem real. It'll make kids see the purpose of why we do this stuff. Because it does matter and it is everywhere and in everything. And you probably don't even notice it because we're not drawing attention to it. So I would love for like our curriculum to do more than just like an end of module as a way to like demonstrate learning.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Thank you, family, for being patient. Let me read final thoughts from Ms. Kaisha. Forgive me, Kaisha. I think I made the same mistake last time and mispronouncing your name. So, Ms. Kaisha, thank you for chiming in and getting me straight on how to say your name, which is of the utmost importance. You are saying, I like humanities' approach to embed literacy skills in a social studies class and vice versa. So this is to Mr. Kaiser's point. So often students say, I don't like reading, writing, language arts, and also say that they love social studies. It's interesting and problematic that they don't see the two as connected. So true. You need one to access the other. Tamika is on and agreeing with curriculum and reflecting. Thank you for joining us, Tamika. Appreciate you. I did see you earlier, couldn't get to you. Thank you for joining us. And also Kaisha is saying it would be so dope to have a social studies co-teacher in each class like math and science. Absolutely. There's so much social studies in each subject. Laugh out loud. And you're absolutely right about that. Ms. Edwards, I appreciate that. And one more from Teachers Democracy Project. This is a comment. The lack of choice that is so common just plain bothers me. Young people should absolutely have lots of opportunities for choice in school. I appreciate the need for a curriculum to lean on, but there has to be room to respond to student interests. Thank you from Teachers Democracy Project. Shout out to Rebecca, who's working triple overtime and producing the show and editing the chat and letting me know. And I need my homeboy Tyrone. This is too much for me. Kaisha also says, what our students learn should reflect them and that can help them experience what it's like when a school sees that they're interested in as valuable. Then we can help them see how what's important to them can help them learn about what's important in other cultures and people, so that that's beautiful, so that their knowledge of self is solid, and they also know how to navigate other cultures and knowledge. That is a nugget, Miss Edwards. I'm not going to try to butcher your name anymore, Miss Edwards. That is a nugget. I want to thank all of you all for joining. I've had a wonderful time just being a part of the conversation myself. Miss McIntyre, Miss Williams, and Mr. Kaiser, thank you all so much for joining us. And we will probably look to book you all again at some time soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
You're so welcome. Family, please join us on Thursday at Tyrone's house. I hope I am not hosting. We do hope our dear brother Tyrone is back. He is the face of the franchise. Let's continue to pray, hold him up. Like I said, he is doing much better, just not quite up to being on camera. And I understand that. So take good care of yourselves. Remember that the pandemic is still going on. Keep yourselves safe. Keep yourselves doing the responsible thing, keeping yourself distant, washing your hands, so forth and so on. And love somebody that you're next to, hold them, tell them you love them. Tomorrow's not promised. So thank you all very much. See you all
Thank you.
next. As a matter of fact, see you Thursday. Thank you, family.
Bye.
Thank you.